Hey everybody, good morning. This is First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich. First week of December. Here we are and we're talking about this big pattern change. Seems like I've been talking about it since Thanksgiving. And I know there's been a lot of excitement online and hype for snow. Here's the thing. The snow chances this week are pretty much zero east of the mountains. Mountains, some pretty good chances of some northwest flow snow. The most important thing to remember is we're going to get cold. The cold is the first part of the equation. If you want to get excited for possible snow down the road, think about next week and later in the month, because with this pattern, it does get interesting. But this week, it's not going to happen. And I'm going to show you why. There's a couple things to keep an eye on. First of all, here's the current situation. You can see our cold front. There's actually blizzard warnings and watches up for parts of the Midwest and the northern plains. I'm going to show you the temperatures real quickly here to show you the nice warm-up we're going to get today ahead of the Arctic front. So expect this southwest wind to develop today and tomorrow. That means temperatures in the 60s. But you can see there is some Arctic air already moving into the U.S. These temperatures up in the northern plains are already in the teens and 20s, even single digits just across the border. I'll turn off the temperatures here just so you can see the frontal systems. Here's the main system, but you can see the Arctic front looming up here in Canada. That's going to be coming down as we go into Wednesday and Thursday. So let's go right to that. This is a look at the Futurecast, basically the GFS model, and the 500 millibar heights. That's up there around 15,000 feet. This is how we look at the big pattern changes. So I put the temperatures below it. You could see our Arctic front. This is today, going into tonight. You could see that Arctic front diving into the Midwest. Look at the warm-up. There's a little ribbon of very warm air just ahead of that front. Now, typically, I'd be a little bit concerned about severe weather with this front, but we don't get a lot of moisture instability ahead of it, though the wind shear is off the charts. So there could be some really gusty winds, and any convection or thunderstorms that could get going definitely could have a wind threat with them, so something to keep an eye on as the front approaches tomorrow. But the thing you notice in this pattern is we talked about this last week. Big ridge over Alaska and the western U.S., big ridge over the North Atlantic, and blocking going on over Greenland. That basically forces a piece of the polar vortex, a lobe of it, to kind of push south. Now, the polar vortex itself is still way up here over the pole, but what happens is if you think about the polar vortex, it's kind of like an amoeba. It's got these little arms or tentacles, and when it weakens, these little tentacles can dive further south, and one of these will be breaking off and moving to the south. So you hear the polar vortex term. A lot of people didn't really grasp what that was when it became popular the last couple years. It's something we talk about all the time in weather. It doesn't really ever move over us, so that's kind of the misnomer. And it's not something you can see. It's just a big air mass over Canada. What I look for is when it weakens like this and it causes polar air to dive to the south, and that's what we're seeing later this week. The Arctic front will move into the Carolinas late tomorrow into early Wednesday morning. So Wednesday will be a weird day. Really warm early in the day, and then temperatures falling like a rock as the cold air spills in. You can see it crossing the Carolinas with really cold air moving in. And then once it moves in, boy, it stays really chilly here. That cold air just keeps funneling down out of Canada, and we're going to see another reinforcing shot of cold air with a secondary surge of Arctic air coming in Friday night into Saturday. And you can kind of see it here. The trough is established. It's right here. But the base of it is right here. It's going to swing through as we go into the weekend. I'm going to widen this out just to show you how cold this air is. We're getting what's called cross-polar flow, and you probably have heard me talk about that. That's basically when the flow of air is coming across the pole from Siberia, and when you see a trough that is basically from the Arctic Circle down to the Gulf of Mexico, that is a huge trough. That's air going from north to south, as opposed from west to east like typically we get. So when we get these big buckles in the jet stream like giant kinks in a hose, this is when you get the real big swings in weather. Really cold, really warm, really stormy. And this is one of those situations in the wintertime where it's going to get really, really cold. So you could see that trough swinging through going into the weekend. And that's when things get a little interesting, because when this base of this trough gets towards the southeast, there's a potential that there could be low pressure to develop. And I do think there will be low pressure to develop, but I don't think it's in the right spot and with the cold enough air in place to really give us wintry weather. So this is going into Saturday, Friday night and Saturday, and you can see the heart of this trough, basically even a cutoff there, coming down over the Great Lakes. This is a really cold pattern. And oh, by the way, there will be a mega lake effect snowstorm going on off the Great Lakes with this cold air spilling in. So that's something to keep in mind if you're heading up that way or if you have friends or family up there. But here's the storm system we're keeping an eye on for Friday night and Saturday that has kind of everybody's apps going crazy. I'm going to turn on the Futurecast And here's the first wave coming through. And you see the model showing snow here. Now, here's the thing to remember about these models. If you look at the actual temperatures, the GFS model has a thing where it shows 6-hour precipitation, but it shows the real-time temperature. So the reason you get this sometimes in the backside of fronts is this precipitation could be 6 hours old. It could be gone already by the time the cold air is, but the model doesn't really know that. It's putting two products together, and sometimes you get a little crossover there where you get this kind of bogus snow on the backside. And if you're not used to looking at the model, that can kind of catch you up a little bit and kind of throw you for a loop. But you can see why people are freaking out, because it looks like there's snow on the backside of this as this low moves up the east coast. The problem with I have with this is that the air, and I'm going to turn the air on here, it looks marginal. It looks like 35 to 40 degree air here at the surface, which isn't really great for snow. And the low pressure is pretty far offshore, so if there's any wraparound snow, it's going to be closer to the coast. In fact, I think this is going to be a bigger deal for the Northeast, because as it gets up there, the potential is that we could have more of a nor'easter there. But the one thing you notice is look at all the lake effect snow coming across the Great Lakes, and good northwest flow snow. So for the mountains, this is why it's going to be a great weekend for skiing, because we're going to get cold air for snowmaking, and we're going to get a bunch of natural snow because we're going to have good northwest flow coming in. And we have what we look at a lot, it's called vorticity. This vorticity is these green colors. That's just energy in the atmosphere. This is a really potent little piece of energy that usually means good snow in the mountains. So if you're in the mountains Friday, Saturday, even middle of the week, we're going to have a couple shots of snow. And actually with the cold air in place, boy, snow machines, the snow guns, and the man-made can go crazy with some natural snow and cold. This will be the kickoff to the season for skiers, and it could be around for a while. I mean, this looks amazing. So this pattern, which I've talked about, is pretty cool because it stays in place, and you'll watch this happen. This is the GFS ensemble, and we're going to go out 15 days here. You can see this trough, which is the blue area, and just think of the blue area as a dip in the jet stream and cold air. Watch as it gets locked in place over the eastern half of the country, and even intensifies going into the weekend. You could see our big ridge, which is the red, which are really high amounts of high pressure, and then this is abnormally low pressure in the atmosphere. And you could see that trough. It sits there over the eastern half of the country through the 15th, through the 16th. If I keep going forward, it looks like it weakens a little bit. This is the 20th of December, but if you look at the pattern, it's not as strong, but there's still a trough over the eastern half of the country. This is basically 15 days from now that we're still in this pattern. I mean, this is unbelievable. Here's another view of that, and you can basically see that piece of the polar vortex coming down. So this is a really favorable pattern, and with it in place, every single time we get a piece of energy, there is potential that we could see some wintry weather. So that's why I don't get excited about the first wave of cold air. It's the follow-on pieces of energy that you need to get excited for. And just to kind of reaffirm this is the chance of snow this week in the southeast. We'll go into Tuesday and Wednesday, and you'll see as we get into Wednesday and Thursday that northwest flow should produce some good snow in the mountains, at least an inch or two, maybe more, especially up in West Virginia. We'll go through Thursday. You could see this could be a pretty good northwest flow event. And then we'll go long range just to see Friday and Saturday. You could see the potential for snow east of the mountains is pretty limited here. This looks to be mainly a mountain and foothill event with this coastal low. So something we'll keep an eye on going into the weekend. But you could see there's really nothing showing up east in the mountains that I would get overly excited about. What about temperatures? Well, you can see after today and tomorrow, we're up there in the 60s. It's a dip. And in fact, this is the European model. It shows highs on Friday and Saturday barely in the 40s, and staying mainly in the 40s for highs, morning lows in the 20s and 30s. Check out next Wednesday, though, on the European. A high of 34 in Charlotte with a low of 18 on December 13th. And if I look at the GFS, it's even colder on some of these days. I'll bounce back and forth, but you can see European, American, European, American. This is a really cold pattern that's going to be locked in place for quite some time. So I'll show it to you one more time. Here's our cold front. It's up here to the northeast. It arrives Tuesday night into Wednesday. It's going to be cold, folks. That's a guarantee. Don't get excited about the snow now. There's none coming east of the mountains, at least in the next 7 days. But next week, with this cold pattern in place, it's just going to take one storm system to sync up. Now that we have the pattern, all we need is a storm. Don't count on that happening with the first wave. The second wave could be something to watch. Of course, I'll update you throughout the week. We'll keep you updated. If anything changes, if it looks like this Saturday low is going to be something more to deal with, we'll talk more about that. But right now, it doesn't look like the cold air is in place for anything there outside of the mountains. But skiers, whoo, this is great for the mountains. Cataloochee, Beech Mountain, Sugar Mountain, Appalachian, Hawks Nest, Winter Place, Snowshoe, Wisp, you name it. All the places in the southeast, get excited. There is going to be great skiing, and this will lead right into the holidays. Even if we get a warm-up for Christmas, which isn't very likely, even if it's a little warm-up, we've got 2 weeks of cold weather and snow to lay down a base that will get us through the holidays. Have a great Monday, everybody.